Howdy folks, and welcome back to yet another video on our 2020 BMW M2 rebuild project. In this video we seriously intend to drive this vehicle because a good neighbor of mine who drives a BMW 3 Series has promised to borrow us his spare wheel, and I'm really hoping that the PCD or profile of his wheel does fit the profile of our vehicle here. Unfortunately, we are still waiting on the brake dust shield cover from BMW, which they've told me is on back order, and I'm only looking at getting it in about a week or two's time. So what I've done is sort of panel beat this old one into shape. Seems like it will fit and will do the trick for now. I've actually gone ahead and created sort of a larger than life, if you will, washer for it to make sure that it keeps it in place, because if you recall, when we took out one of these bolts over here, we found that this was damaged. As you can see, there's a hole in there, so I made this makeshift big washer just to make sure it holds this in place once we get it installed. And what we'll obviously be doing is installing back the brake caliper, which we had to take off obviously while we were doing repairs on the vehicle. So let's go ahead and get that done. We'll start obviously by installing this brake dust shield, put it back in place, and that should be followed by the disc, and obviously we'll then have to rebuild the caliper or install the brake pads onto the caliper and put that back on. And I'll have to then bleed the brakes obviously, and then we'll see about getting that wheel from my neighbor. Let's get it done. I was also looking at this wiring loom, and I noticed that there is something that was sheared right off during the accident over there, and I didn't know what it was. So after a bit of digging, I suspect that this was actually the external or ambient temperature sensor, and so I went and bought one. This is non-OEM, but I bought one with a small piece of cable so that I can just attach this back onto this wire, because I also noticed that the temperature inside the vehicle reads as -40 degrees, which is an indication that the sensor is either not working or it's not picking up the right information, or it's malfunctioning, and so the vehicle just defaults to -40 degrees. So I'm hoping after installing this that should fix the problem, but I'm not going to install it now. I just need to get the inner wheel arch liner so that I know exactly where it fits and how long it should be. Now I've gone ahead and given the wheel hub a nice scrub with the wire brush, as well as the inside of the brake disc. This is to just ensure that the disc sits as flush against the wheel hub as possible, and we'll now go ahead and install it back. With the brake dust shield, the disc, as well as the caliper now installed, I want to move on to bleeding the brakes. Now, how this works is you fill up your reservoir, which is this one over here, with brake fluid, and then with the bleeding you start with the wheel that is furthest away from the master cylinder. Now that one, for me, since this is a right hand drive vehicle, it will be the rear left wheel, which I'll take you to now. So I've already removed the wheel, and as you can see, this was sitting for quite some time. This car was sitting for quite some time with the wheels not moving or not being removed. You can see even on the inside of the wheel, there's a lot of dirt in there, and it looks like rust. I'm assuming the wheel was deionizing, I believe it should be called, or essentially just rusting. So what we need to do is bleed out this wheel first, and I'll show you the kit that I'll be using. This is the kit that I'll be using. It's a hand pump. What it does, it creates a vacuum in this little container here that sucks out all the air, and as it sucks out all the air, it then sucks the brake fluid, the old brake fluid, from which wheel in turn, or from each caliper in turn. So I'll just put it together now and show you how it works. But what I'll do, I'll bleed all the brakes, and then I will show you when I'm working on the left front wheel, which is the one that we've been working on all along. This is the bleeder now assembled, and we use it in turn at each wheel to extract the old brake fluid. This obviously goes onto your bleeding nipple, and as you press on this pump, it actually creates a vacuum in here and sucks in the old brake fluid from the caliper into this container here. And we'll do this in turn, but like I said, I'll only record when we're working on the front left wheel, which we've been working on all along. Alrighty, the rear brake calipers have both been bled, and now we're going to do the front left one. You will notice that there is actually two bleeding nipples, one on the outside and one here on the inside. Since we are starting with the one furthest away from the master cylinder, which is on the other side of the vehicle, it means we'll be starting with the outmost one, and then we'll move on to the innermost one. I'll go ahead and take off the valves for the bleeding nipples, and then we'll be using a spanner number 11 to just open it up just before we bleed it. Now the aim, or the end goal, is to bleed the brakes until there is a clear solid line of brake fluid flowing through the tube without any air bubbles. Now the brake fluid that was in the system in this vehicle was not very old, so we won't be able to see a clear change in color in the tube, indicating that the old brake fluid, which most of the time would have changed color, is now out of the system, and we are seeing the new brake fluid through. So what we'll do, we'll just bleed it for a bit of time until we are just sure or confident that the old brake fluid is out of the system and there's only the new brake fluid which we are actually adding. Next up is a bit of electrical work. If you look at this wiring harness, you will see that there was a bit of damage here during the accident. Some wires were cut, and there's one that was sheared right off. What we'll be installing today is the horn, because the horn sits here and it gets plugged onto this connector, but we won't be using this one, because what I went and did is got a generic horn. This one is the low frequency one, and I'm going to solder it onto here. So I'm going to cut these two wires, solder the one here. I've got my soldering iron here, battery powered obviously, and I'm going to solder it onto here, and then I'm gonna just cover it up to make sure it's properly insulated. So yeah, let's go ahead and get that done. So I'm going to twist these two lines together like this, and then I'm just gonna solder them together with obviously the soldering iron and the soldering wire. And then I'm going to do the same thing for this line, for these two lines here. Twist them together. Twist them together like this. And then what I'm gonna do, gonna leave this horn here. Okay, gonna leave it over there. I'll leave it there. We're gonna come to this side and disconnect this right horn. So now we're gonna go and test out the horn. Gonna leave you guys here. You can please just listen for me. You can please just listen for me if this does go off. I'm gonna go inside the vehicle, test out the horn. Let me know if it makes a sound. And I think we're good to go. The next thing is to just solder this together and we should be done. Okay, the next thing is to cover this up with the heat shrink. This is the heat shrink here. Be sure to insert the heat shrink before you do the soldering. So what we're going to do is bend this wire this way, and then I'm gonna push the heat shrink over it. Okay, looks like I needed a bigger piece of heat shrink with a bigger diameter. Let me see if I can wiggle this through. Okay, there you go. So what I'll do now is apply heat to this one. Now I don't think BMW themselves could have insulated these wires better than this. Let's get this connected, installed and tested one last time, and then we should be done for today. Okay, let's test this baby one more time. The brake dust shield eventually arrived from BMW, and we're going to go ahead and replace the old one with this new one like this. I ended up not wanting to disturb my neighbor during the holidays by borrowing his wheel, but the good news is I found a place that can actually repair our rim. I've left it with them and it should be ready within the next few days, and we can finally take this baby out for a spin and test her out. I did also score a second-hand headlight, a fender, as well as a stiffener, otherwise known as the crash bar, and I've already gone ahead and just installed these, and you can have a look at the photos which I took and the video of these. Being the holidays, I also did struggle to find parts since most places were closed, so apologies for the slow progress in this project. But in the next video, please look forward to definitely taking this baby out for a spin. And we've come to the end of this video, obviously, and as always, if you found any value in this, you would like to see similar content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Give us a thumbs up if you like the content as well. Share the video and definitely hit that notification bell so that you do not miss out when we release new content for this project and other videos that you might put out in the future. Until next time, cheerio.